Damian Hall, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
You're a very busy man. You're a speaker, journalist, author, coach, activist, athlete. You always seem to have a project on the go. What's keeping you busy as we move into winter?
Much more of the being an athlete and a coach side of things. As we're talking, it's mid-December. I've got a big race in early mid-January called the Spine Race, which is 268 miles up the Pennine Way in British winter. So I'm going to be starting that for a fifth time. But so a lot of the preparation is, things I've done before that have worked in terms of kit and so on. But I actually have quite a few athletes doing it as well. So that's quite exciting. And so it's talking them through it and getting their training right and helping them with kit ideas and yeah, so it's both me and others. And yeah, couldn't be much happier, to be honest. That's the way I like it.
The spine race you talk about there, it's something we spoke about with John Kelly, big 268 mile across the country. What is it about something like that, or a lot of these ultra races that you do, that entices you? Because there's a massive fear of failure, and a lot of people don't like the failure aspect. And there's so many variables when you're literally running for about 3 days. How does that entice you as a way?
It's actually kind of the variables that make it quite exciting, I think, because you can. I mean, sometimes it does feel like the spinning plates scenario where I don't know, you're pacing it quite well, but actually a bit of your kit is failing, or the weather's being horrendous, or you've not been fueling that well, or you've got a bit of cramp, or there's all these little things to be on top of, and the reality is you probably won't be on top of them all the time with something this long. But that to me, that's quite exciting. And then also there's the kind of physical element of there's almost four movement patterns, like running on the flat, running downhill, running uphill, or hiking uphill. Because when it gets steep, there's not much point in sort of overpowering your muscles on a steep climb when you can hike very efficiently. So there's almost four different movement skills or techniques there. And what you find is, almost no one is brilliant at all of them. Most people have one they're stronger at and one they're weaker at, and that's quite fun and interesting too during a race and looking at your rivals as well. And then you've got things like the weather, and if it's a new course, it's a new adventure. So there's so much to think about and try and master in your training as well. And then really it does come down to that word, I think, adventure. Even though I'm doing a course, the Pennine Way, that I've done several times, I know it's going to be different, partly because of the weather, and that's exciting. Although I'm sort of repeating it, I'm back there because I love it and the atmosphere around the race. But yeah, it's adventure. I think above all, it's going out and having an adventure.
When you're prepping for such a big event like that, we are kindred spirits in a very distinct way. That's because we both hate spreadsheets. With these events, there's so much prep involved. How do you navigate that with a healthy suspicion of spreadsheets? Is it a ignorance is bliss, or do you really have to just crack on and plan every minute detail?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of tried both. I guess I've been doing this 10 years. I've tried both approaches really, and my character, my personality is probably just somewhere in the middle. I'm a reasonably well organized person, but I don't I don't love spreadsheets. I don't trust them. I don't really understand how you make them, and you put numbers in one box and a different box has different numbers. It's a bit like witchcraft. It doesn't mean I never do a spreadsheet because sometimes that's essential. But yeah, I think you can be well organized without a spreadsheet. You can sometimes overanalyze or overestimate things. I think I go into too much detail when there are so many variables, like we said. But I definitely like to prepare thoroughly. When I do an event like this, it's on my mind, constantly. But there are lots of different things you can do to prepare. Obviously, there's the physical, the running training. There's the strength work. There's physiotherapy. There's perhaps stretching and rolling, and any other rehab or prehab that you might do. There might be some cross training, so that might be a lot of hours in a week, just your physical training. There's mental preparation. I mean, if it's a new one, you may or may not be able to recce the route. With something like the spine, there's a lot of kit, 31 items of kit on the mandatory kit list that we have to carry. Now, for me, because I've done the race the previous 2 years, I've got that quite finely tuned. I don't have to worry this time. But sometimes you're really, trying to suss out what's the best kit the best options for you, and what can you afford, and what's going to be best for the race. And that can be quite exciting. That's part of the preparation. So yeah, I feel like I'm well prepared, and I feel like I'm pretty thorough without too many spreadsheets. And I do think with something like the spine, you can almost over prepare with spreadsheets, in that it's difficult to predict where you will be on the course in 48 hours time, because the weather, the terrain, the pack, the kit you have to carry just slow you down. So most people will be going slower than they anticipate. And if you had too much of a strict plan for that, you might be disappointed when actually you're doing absolutely fine, but you've estimated you'll be there 2 hours sooner, and you might be disappointed when there's no need to be disappointed. So yeah, I guess that's broadly my approach.
You mentioned there prehab weight training, potentially stretching, rolling, etc. Now, before we went live, you said there's some weights in your office that haven't seen much use. Do you cross train much at all, or is it just pretty much all of your time spent on running?
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of strength training. I do various things. So I sometimes do one-on-one strength work. I go to a gym with a strength and conditioning coach. I quite frequently do remote classes with the same guy, Coach D in Bath, who's a great guy. So this morning, I did a 30-minute remote class. What else do I do? I do have some. I mean, I was slightly fibbing in that. Yeah, I also have some kettlebells in the house, and they do get used a fair bit. It just, there are some optimistically down by my desk, which I often overlook. I guess sometimes I swing them around a bit when I'm on a call or something. But yeah, I do those things. I sometimes just go to the local gym on my own sort of volition and do a bit. I do have a squat rack in the garden as well, which is getting used at the moment. So yeah, I've come to learn, and the science says for older athletes, and I'm nearer 50 than 40, strength training is extra important, actually. So I know there's loads of reasons to do strength training. It can improve our economy, hopefully makes our muscles more fatigue resistant, hopefully makes us more injury resistant. So yeah, hopefully, maybe there's some aesthetic gains, hopefully. So 4 or 5 good reasons to do strength work in my book. But it is harder to motivate. Most runners find it harder to motivate themselves to do that than the actual running, which is usually more fun.
Because you'll have so many accumulative miles in your legs, do you need to do like a big training block ahead of, say, something like the spine, or can you pretty much just taper things off as normal?
Well, I would describe. I do have my own coach, David Roach, who's in America. He's probably coached me about 4 years now, and I've had other coaches in the past, and I've been self-coached with sort of one really good year, and then one year when I was probably plateauing from probably just running too much and overdoing it. So I would say my current coach, David Roach, he has me in what I would call sort of moderate volume of running most of the year, which for me is, I suppose, around 70 miles a week. But then when we're in a specific phase, peak training for an A race, which we pretty much are doing now, the volume might go up to 80, 90, occasionally 100 miles. So yeah, rather than a sort of chronic fatigue, like lots of miles all the time, we keep it sort of moderate, so that hopefully we can keep my economy and speed at a like one of his philosophies is we should never be too far from our 10k PB pace. And there is a temptation with ultra running to think, well, I need to do big miles all the time, and there's some benefit in that. Lots of easy running is a good approach, depending on lifestyle, etc. But for me, I haven't had, touch wood, an injury for many years, so I've got 6 or 7 years of sort of consistent training. So my economy, my sort of aerobic capacity is probably near its maximum. So I don't need to, or at least his thoughts, and I agree, are that I don't personally need to do sort of 80, 90, 100 miles a week. Most weeks I'll just end up tired, really. And then when you want to work on your economy, you want to try and run faster, you won't do those so well because you'll be tired. So yeah, that's kind of the approach at the moment.
So you mentioned there that you're a coach, but you also are a coach yourself. You coach one of the biggest female names in Jasmine Paris. Surely, as a coach, you could then say that you will have all the answers. So then why do you outsource your own personal coaching?
Partly David works as a mentor to me. So if I've got it, when I have questions about, okay, this is curious, how should I train this athlete, or or this athlete's race went unexpectedly, and I can't quite pinpoint why. I'm very lucky. I've got several experts around me I can call upon. So David's great with that. Also, say Renee McGregor, who's a very well-known sports dietitian. She's a great help to me, and one or two others. Yeah, Coach D with the strength work, for example. So I've got, he forms part of a team around me as both an athlete and a coach, really. And yeah, back to what I said earlier, really, in that when I self-coached, I had a great year, and then the second year I wasn't doing so well. Could be several reasons, but ultimately I think I was running because I could, not because I should. So I was probably just doing too much. So having a bit of guidance, someone holding me back a bit, and giving me the quality workouts, which I might neglect otherwise, is seems to be good for me. It doesn't mean everything goes to plan, but it's good to have someone to be accountable to and bounce ideas off. Seems to work most of the time, but not always.
I've done a couple of through the night races on the bike, and obviously they were nothing as dramatic or as serious as you. But one thing that really struck me was when you're out riding by yourself in the middle of the countryside at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. and you're tired, just the loneliness that you feel because you're so isolated, and then your body's playing up and your mind's playing up. How do you combat that? Because in a spine race, you're out for like 3 days. It must just feel so lonely, especially when your head's playing up.
It depends a bit on the race or the challenge, but with the spine race, actually it's incredible. There's only one major checkpoint roughly every 24 hours, but the staff and volunteers there are just incredible, so helpful, so supportive, so smiley, and just kind. But also the amazing thing with the spine is it just seems to attract people. Strangers just pop up in the middle of nowhere in these godforsaken sort of bits of wet moorland at night, and just ring a cowbell or cheer you in, or offer you some sweets. So actually, although you get those moments, you get the opposite as well, and you do get this bond with the other runners. Sometimes you're running with other people for hours. So yeah, I think that's true, and sometimes that solitude is wonderful, isn't it? I don't often get that in life, actually. And some of it might just be getting a good screen break as well. You can carry a phone, but mine's going to be switched on airplane mode and tucked away, trying to save the battery. But in fact, you have to carry a phone of some sort. There doesn't need to be a smartphone. So yeah, it can be wonderfully, kind of hesitate to say the word cleansing, but it can be wonderful to spend time on your own. And then I feel like there is the company there. You probably don't go more than 6 or 8 hours without seeing someone. So I don't know. It's probably good for us to be a bit lonely sometimes.
Yeah, it's one of those in the modern society, you never really get a chance to be out maybe like 5 miles from anyone else, and that loneliness in a really acute sense. What are your views on headphones in races? Because this is a contentious one. People are either very headphone pro or very against headphones. And you're doing all of these things. And from your photos and videos online, I haven't seen any headphones, but I could be wrong, especially because you're out for several days at a time.
Yeah, there's I actually in my training, I'm a real podcast junkie. Actually, I almost never run without my headphones in, if I'm honest, or at least round Wiltshire on the sort of back lanes and slippery, slidey, muddy fields. I've nearly always got a podcast in, usually either running or football. In a race, some races don't allow headphones. Usually that's because there'll be lots of time on the road, and you want to be held, hear the traffic. For something like the spine or UTMB, I tend to think of my headphones and any music or podcasts or audiobooks as like a treat. So I tend to try and save them for sort of halfway into the race, and almost like something to look forward to, I suppose. And it can be a really nice distraction. I've got a race mix on a couple of iPods, and then I'll download some podcasts, audiobooks, and it can be really helpful actually to keep you stimulated, keep you awake, just distract you a little bit from thinking too much about yourself and how your foot hurts. So I'm totally on board with it. You do get a small crowd of people online who could have you shouldn't put anything in your ears. You should be soaking up nature, which is fine. I mean, that's a nice approach. And on longer runs in the Brecon Beacons, Banal, Breckenjog, or proper mountains, usually I don't. But I mean, each to their own. And for me, it's a good racing tool.
You've done all of these races. You've got 8 FKTs as well and everything. What's been like the worst moment? You must have accumulated so many war stories in your time.
I suppose people usually like to hear about hallucinations, and I have got in the habit of the last few years of doing, I suppose, doing 200-mile races. So you nearly always are out for more than one night. I find one night is usually pretty manageable, but the second night is when things start to get wobbly, and the third night is when things start to get really wobbly. I've done the Tour de Gion twice, which is sort of 200 plus miles in the Italian Alps, and even though it went much better for me this year, yeah, the year before I'd had hallucinations of inflatables. So I was seeing inflatable penguins and inflatable sharks, and of course a Michelin man, like in Ghostbusters. But this year, actually, I managed the sleep deprivation much better, but I still had a moment. Apparently, I told someone else's crew when I came to the checkpoint that firstly, I didn't know who I was anymore. And it's not like you go through everyday life thinking I know who I am, but I had this really strong feeling of I'm not sure who I am. I don't know who am I? What am I? And I did ask my crew. I said, "Oh, am I in a race?" I knew I had to run 330 kilometers, but I didn't. Is this a race? I said to him. This is all on the third night. Um, but I also said apparently that I came to a crossroads of 5 paths, and they all led to infinity. So I had quite a troubled spell there. Actually, the race ended up, it sounds like a disaster, but I ended up fourth, which was a huge improvement from the previous year. So I just needed a bit of a sleep at that point, which did help. So yeah, it gets pretty crazy. I'd say second night gets tricky. Third night is when it gets really messy, and it'll be similar again on the spine this time around. It may well get to those sort of scenarios. Let's see.
What's so appealing, I think, is that you're quite a earthy and hardy runner. There's not a lot of faff. You just get on and do it. You say a lot of your ultra efforts are powered mostly by tea.
And I just took a slurp of tea while you were asking me that. I just love tea. I don't like coffee. In fact, I hate coffee, and I find water really quite boring. So I'm usually not tempted to drink water if it has electrolytes in. Usually there's a bit of sugary, salty stuff, so that's a bit more appealing. I love fruit juice as well. That goes down well. Obviously, you're getting some calories in. But I genuinely love tea. I have 5 or 6 cups a day, and I don't know. I try and bring that if I can. I bring that into my races or my challenges. It's tricky when you're abroad at the Tour de Gion. The Italian tea doesn't taste anything like our tea. Still not quite sure what it is. It seems like a mixture between black tea and green tea, but it's still better than not tea. So yeah, I just love tea.
You coach Jasmine Paris, as we mentioned already, and you also coach several other athletes. You have a team around you that helps. How does being an athlete, someone in the race, in the field, help you as a coach?
Well, I mean, I originally found people were coming to me because they wanted to do the races I was doing or had done. It started with the UTMB. In fact, I was a kind of a reluctant coach at first. I hadn't, yeah, I wasn't planning necessarily, or at least right away, to go into coaching. But people were approaching me as I was doing better at UTMB. I did it sort of 4 years in a row, improving each time. And people, yeah, I'm thankful for the first 2 or 3 people who approached me, because I sort of said, well, I'm not a coach. I got no qualifications. And a couple of them were sort of saying, well, we don't mind. We just want to know what you know. How did you train for this race? What's it like doing it? So yeah, my coaching started on that basis of I've done this race, so I can tell you what it's like and how to train. And that extended, I suppose, quite early on. I did do the spine race. It was my 5th race, I think. The Dragon's Back race as well is a big one that a lot of people sign up for. So I suppose in my first few years, I've done those 3 big ones. Yeah, I mean, I'm not just coaching people for races I've done, but a lot of the time it is. So I guess it makes sense, right? If you're well, I mean, people take on coaches for different reasons. Sometimes it's for one particular goal, one particular race, that usually is something huge that intimidates them, which is really a really exciting scenario for me and hopefully for them. And I can hopefully, give them a thorough preparation, physical, mental, and sort of logistics and kit. But equally, some people have a coach they just want, I suppose, continuous development and hopefully injury-free, consistent running that will really, bring them joy, make them happy. Some people really want to see the measurement of progress, and some people aren't that interested in that, which is probably possibly even healthier, if not at least as healthy. So you do get people coming for different motivations, and yeah, certainly by now I've coached people for lots of races that I haven't done myself. But I know what 100 miles feels like. I know what 200 miles feels like. I know what that second or third night feels like. So yeah, no, it's a huge element of my coaching. It would be hard. It'd be interesting. I'm trying to think out loud how many sort of ultra marathon coaches haven't done ultra marathons themselves. It doesn't mean they couldn't be a good coach at all, because I mean, a lot of it is the theory and applying the theory, isn't it? But yeah, certainly a lot of my coaching is informed by the races I've done.
You've got 8 FKTs under your belt. What's the thought process behind choosing an FKT? Is it that you just like the look of the route and then just bash it out? Or is there a deeper meaning behind the routes that you choose?
You're asking on a good day, because I did actually not long before our call. I emailed my coach with three ideas for next year. So I mean, at the moment, while I can still be competitive at some of these, it is more exciting to me to go for some of the, I suppose, the more historic or the more competitive ones while I can. But I mean, there are some I just have no chance of. Like, for example, the Bob Graham round. That's a really, really quick time now, and the athletes doing it, are athletes in a tier above me, maybe several tiers above. And I know my strengths are probably that the longer it goes, the more likely I am to do well. And it does seem like the 2 to 3 day thing is where I've had moderate success. I guess I've had some 24 hour, sub 24 hour. I mean, I did have the record for the Paddy Buckley round, winter and summer, but yeah, I'm not as fast as I was. So it would be longer things. Yeah, it's a combination. So it's an element of competitiveness. I mean, there are some really long routes out there, and the record is fairly new, and it might be. I've honestly got a long list of well over 10, and some of them are sort of 2, 3, 4 years away. I'm happy for those records to sort of mature a bit first. Although maybe I'm kidding myself about when I could go and do them. But yeah, for now it's how competitive is that record? How prestigious, and then how does it suit me as an athlete? So, for example, I don't know. Maybe I'm. What does suit me? I suppose it's longer distance. I mean, the classic one might be the coast to coast record that I set in 2021. What was that? Close to 200 miles, and really it had a bit of everything terrain wise. It went through the Lake District, so really steep, up and down the fells. But then there was quite a flat section in the middle, and then the North York Moors at the end. It's more sort of undulating. So it sort of had sort of a bit of everything. And I probably am a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. So a strict fell running record, there aren't many probably that I could get anymore. But a 2 to 3 day route with some changes in terrain probably suits me better. But then also it's got to be appealing in a sort of aesthetic or scenic way. It's got to be somewhere you're excited to run. For example, I went and ran with Dan Lawson for a bit when he did the joggle record, Land's End, John O'Groats, and more heck. I mean, it's mostly on road, and it's mostly next to lorries and traffic. I admire him all the more for doing that, because that's hard mentally, really hard. Just the noise, the stress of the safety element. He's really good at sort of zoning out from that. But yeah, to me, that's so much more stressful than running on a trail, I suppose. So that's another element. And then family as well, really. I mean, there are some really exciting challenges around the world that, take weeks and weeks. And I'm not sure how long I want to be away from my kids, really. So it's weighing that up as well. Probably, I suppose, roughly in that order. I don't know. It's 3 or 4 factors each time.
What I really would like to know, because you are a vegan for environmental reasons, is how you fuel yourself for these big things because you're trying to take as little to no plastic as possible. And then you're also relying on a vegan diet. How has your fueling adapted since going vegan for these big races?
I suppose in 2019, 2020, I started to become sort of much more aware of my footprint and the footprint of running, the sort of, yeah, the CO2e footprint rather than the footprint in the mud. What's interesting is that some of the things I thought at the beginning aren't the things I think now, I suppose, once you become better informed. So one of the and this is one of the, I'd say, one of the classic mistakes with sort of climate breakdown is that often the visible things aren't the biggest problems. So some of my early records, I picked up litter as we went, which kind of, when those runs were successful, the media, I'd get on the BBC and stuff, and they loved, they loved the fact I picked up litter. When really, I mean, that's kind of the smallest thing you can do, and then you could, and we probably, most of us do that anyway, don't we? When we're out on the trails or out on the fells. Um, so it was odd that I get so much attention from that when it's a little thing really. And I experimented with my nutrition. I wasn't full vegan at the time, but I would be vegan for those attempts, kind of out of interest, but that keeps the footprint of it of the footprint of the attempt down. And then also, we see so much plastic packaging, don't we? But and often that's what ends up being the rubbish, and it's quite emotive, isn't it, and tangible. But again, when you look into the research more, avoiding meat and dairy, and especially beef and secondarily lamb, that's far better. That's far more significant than cutting down plastic. So if I'm honest with plastic, I don't obsess over that anymore. Of course, I think like most people, you don't like to buy the food in the worst, most elaborate plastic packaging, and hopefully it's, you hope in it, when you do, you want the recyclable, although that has plenty of flaws. I did a whole book on this called we can't run away from this, which is just generally pretty depressing. So really, I'm not as obsessed with the plastic thing as I did, but it was much harder for those 2 or 3 record attempts when I did that. It was much harder to avoid the plastic than it was to cut out meat and dairy. Just about managed it, but it was I couldn't even say the chocolate bars. If we put aside the vegan thing for, I couldn't have crisps, I couldn't have chocolate bars, even bread. You have to be careful. The bread bag, was that recyclable? So it was really hard to do that. And I remember, but here's where it gets tricky. Is I remember driving to get some. I did found a crisp company that did biodegradable packaging, but I drove 7 or 8 miles to get it, and that's actually most likely worse than walking to my local shop or getting the normal delivery and getting the standard crisps. So it's fraught with complexity and frustration. So really, I've just settled on eating a vegan diet, and that will reduce people's footprint from food by up to 74%. So really, that's the better thing. Of course, I still pick up litter, and of course, I still try and reduce and limit plastic and recycle all I can. But we can get, I think, to concentrate on the wrong areas too much. But I mean, I'm lucky. I one more thing on that, I suppose, is that I've got food sponsors now, nutrition sponsors now that all take care of their packaging, whether you send it back to them or it's already compostable, such as Vela Forte, Supernatural Fuel, 33 Fuel. They're all companies who take that stuff seriously, and that's nice. I did stop working with a sponsor who was actually really really good in terms of the product and supporting me well, but they weren't serious about the plastic waste they were creating, so I stopped working with them. Even though, as I say, cutting out or down meat and dairy will have more impact.
On the sort of environmental sustainability front, your kit sponsor Innovate have started repairing old kit, and we were speaking to Ali Ostrander last week, who's a Normal ambassador, and Normal are another brand who have kind of come on with the sustainability and eco-conscious clothing and footwear. Is this a trend that you see happening across all of the running industry?
Yeah, I think as far as I can tell, they're all making some kind of play, some kind of claim. Unfortunately, there's lots and lots of greenwashing, and especially the bigger brands are saying, "Hey, look, we're making well, Adidas are the classic example that, for quite a few years they've been claiming they make a shoe with plastic rescued from the ocean, and you're like, well, that sounds good, doesn't it? They were exposed in a Channel 4 Dispatches documentary that plastic probably didn't come from the ocean in the first place. But then it's like, well, why are you why are you doing that with one shoe, and then your other 19 shoes you don't do that? Why, if you really care, you would surely bring in that process for all the shoes to reduce the footprint of the materials. And then, of course, more recently, Adidas brought out a super shoe for marathons that you're meant to throw away after your marathon. And all those shoes are made of fossil fuels, and they won't biodegrade for hundreds of years. So there's a lot. The big companies, especially, they're greenwashing. They're pretending. Nike, again, have similar shoes that they claim are better for the environment, but they're trying to double their business. They're quite open about that. So that means much more consumption, much more products being made. Innovate aren't perfect, but I applaud their new scheme, Renovate, which is a step in the right direction. But it's really hard for runners, for customers to tell who's doing the right thing. Really, it probably has to. Some of it comes back to us. We probably have to buy less, buy things that will last, that we really want, that will fit us, and help make them last longer. By sort of reuse, repairing, and then being careful what we do with it when it's no longer wanted by us, because almost none of that stuff gets recycled still. So it's a real the whole fashion industry, the whole clothing industry is a real mess, and it's a horrendous contributor to climate breakdown. It's pretty depressing, but you do see lights in there. I mean, Patagonia are the company who are most often associated with doing the right thing, and they're not perfect. They are, oddly, they're making their own wine and making food and stuff, and you're sort of like, well, they're clearly expanding continuously, but they do give money directly to activists, to activism causes. So they are actually, I think they are doing more than anyone else. They're a multi-billion-pound global company, but they do fund things, and they do make a stand on things. So they're not perfect, but they are the best in that regard. But it is, it's confusing for runners, and it's not, and athletes. It's hard to know who's telling the truth and who's doing the right thing.
So, apart from continuing the activism fight and doing the spine race, what can we expect from Damian Hall in the coming few months?
Really, I'm just thinking mostly about the spine race for now, which is 14th Sunday, the 14th of January. After that, I haven't decided what to do with the rest of my year. I might be tempted to go back to the Tour de Gion late in the summer. And as I say, I've sent my coach an email with three record attempt ideas. We'll see what he thinks. And certainly with the Green Runners, they'll keep me busy. We do plan another running out of time climate relay. It'd be amazing for people to get involved. It's really expanded. We've done it twice, but last year it was, ITV covered a lot of it. It got lots of coverage. It's really, there are people doing on it full time. Really, a lot of thought goes into it. It was great fun. The first year, I remember doing a sort of through the night leg, 30 miles, mostly with a friend, but partly on my own through the night in Wiltshire. But this year they did it sort of, less of a rush, only in the daytime, better timing, so you could sort of mingle and chat at the crossover points, but also lots of things going on in between. Canoeists handing over the baton, and Morris dancers, which may divide opinion, but just lots, and visiting, really cool eco projects, and so much thought went into it. And there are some big ideas for next year involving, I don't want to give too much away, but, and I'm not totally central to the discussions, but hopefully, I don't know when yet, but it'll be summer-ish. So we'd love it if people get involved. You can cycle it as well. Don't have to run. In fact, some legs are cycle only. So please, keep an eye out for that. Please come and join the Green Runners, everyone. It's just a couple of quid for sort of admin, to cover admin and get your badge. And we have over 1,000 members all around the world. So I think exciting times in that regard as well. And those two things will definitely keep me busy.
Well, Damien, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Not at all. Thank you. It's been a blast.